We're going to be talking with John Little, who is the VP of Aviation for Identified Technologies. He has about 20 years of experience with FAA training and flight services. And any questions you have about drone regulations, he is your man. As you have questions throughout today's webinar, you can submit them with the boxes below. You'll click the arrow as shown and then just fill out the questions box. So you can send questions at any time. We'll have the dedicated Q&A portion, but you have any questions about anything, we'll try to address them as we go. So first off, the intro to drone mapping. So you're seeing drones used for a lot of different industries, for mining, for things like tracking progress and stockpiles, for construction, particularly horizontal construction projects like highways, giant shopping malls, where there's a lot of site prep and earth moving to track, oil and gas for all kinds of construction projects like well pads, pipelines, as well as just tracking over time to make sure everything's in good shape, landfills to make sure that you're optimizing the use of the airspace, engineering for surveying purposes in particular, things that traditionally had to be done with a full airplane, full pilot, full jet fuel, that now you just send out the drone. And how our drone mapping process works is you have a tablet, you're going to select your flight plan that you want the drone to fly. You're not manually steering the thing with your thumbs on joysticks. You choose the area you want it to fly and it'll fly itself. You activate the drone, it'll take itself off, fly the area in a lawnmower pattern, come back, land itself. The data is automatically processed and you can log on and access and analyze your job site, as well as collaborate with other stakeholders that may be interested, whether that's other teams you're working with, subcontractors, project owners, or leadership for your company. So with that out of the way, let's get to what you need to know about 2018 drone laws and how to pass the Part 107. So for those of you that don't know, what is the FAA Part 107? Well, that is the Federal Aviation Regulation, Part 107, that's a small unmanned aircraft systems policy. It allows operators to fly commercial drones under 55 pounds with the FAA Part 107 commercial drone license. And that covers the vast majority of commercial drone work. We're not talking about things big enough to carry people or, drop off refrigerators when Amazon gets their drone delivery down. These are small drones, generally maybe 2 to 10 pounds, and they don't pose a huge threat to people, but you just want to make sure that you're operating them safe, responsibly, and efficiently. So why is it so important to get the FAA Part 107 commercial drone license? Well, it does a few things for you. It really increases efficiency, because when you can fly on your own on demand, then suddenly anytime you want data updated about your job site, regardless of industry, you can do it at the push of a button. Literally, the drone takes itself off, captures the data, lands, and you get your data uploaded. That's it. So you don't have to deal with the headache and the cost of waiting for subcontractors or third parties to come out what may be hundreds or thousands of miles from their base. You just get it whenever you want it, and you avoid all those logistic issues. You don't have someone come out and then they lose the day because there's bad weather, it's too windy, there's bad visibility. It's just whenever you want it. It also means that basically, if a drone can fly in virtually anything that you'd want to have a human out in. So if you're going to have one of your employees out there anyway, it's not a lot of extra trouble to just have them collect the data where they're there. In terms of why is it worth actually getting the certification? Well, Skypan recently had an unfortunate issue. They got a $1.9 million lawsuit from the FAA for doing unlicensed commercial drone flights. What we generally hear is that it's not a matter of if the FAA will come knocking on your door if you're doing commercial drone flights, it's just when. So the benefits of flying your own drones are very real, and the benefits of getting proper licensing to fly your own drones are very real. To do so, to get the licensing is not a huge problem. You have to obtain the certificate when you're performing flights. You got to keep it on you. So, if someone stops you, you have to have your certificate to prove that you're licensed, just like your driver's license. The surveying drone or the mapping drone, whatever you're using, it has to weigh less than 55 pounds. So somewhere under that range. Again, most of the commercial options out there do, unless you're doing something like transportation. You have to fly in daylight or twilight. Maximum altitude is 400 feet above the ground. Maximum speed is 100 miles per hour or 87 knots. And the drones can't fly under a covered structure. So it has to be used outdoors. You wouldn't be able to do something like, well, let's say within a house. There's other rules, but these are a few of the rules that you must abide by under the 107. To get your 107 license, you go into the exam. There's going to be 60 questions, multiple choice. There's 3 multiple choice answers per question, and you must get a passing score of 70% of that 60. It costs approximately $150 to take the exam, and if you do fail, you have to wait 14 calendar days to take it again, and then you do have to pay that initial $150 cost again to retake it. And their idea is just, hey, take a break, study up, and then come back once you know your stuff. To register, you have to call your local knowledge testing center to schedule an exam appointment. We usually recommend setting the date at least 2 weeks out from when you schedule. You have to show up with a government-issued photo ID to take the exam. And that could be a passport, that could be a driver's license. And in terms of, well, what should you be studying for the exam? Well, there's 5 main categories. There's regulations, there's airspace, there's weather, there's loading and performance, and there's operations. And I'll be talking with you a little bit about each one of these areas. So for regulations, an example would be waivers. So if the remote pilot determines that the operation cannot be conducted within the regulatory structure of Part 107, he or she is responsible for applying for a certificate of waiver, or a COW, proposing a safe alternative. There's many more subjects that fall under regulations, such as accident reporting, FAA inspection, and use of drugs and alcohol. And we'll be going deeper into these in our own training materials, but this gives you an idea. For airspace and requirements, you got airspaces A, B, C, and D. You can sort of see from this chart an idea of where they each fall. And this is covered under the National Airspace System topic, which you'll need to know in detail what each class means, how it is identified on the sectional chart, topography, airport markings and signs, and collision avoidance. These are all covered under the National Airspace System. And the big idea is, look, you don't want your drone flying next to a Boeing 747. You have kind of different levels of airspace designated for different work. For weather, the weather topic goes into reports, forecasts, and charts. You need to know how to use weather reporting codes, automated weather observing systems, and understand atmospheric stability, density, altitude, and weather briefing. And again, we have training materials to kind of hold your hand through this, and you have people like John Little, our VP of Aviation with 20 years doing this, to answer your questions and make sure you go in ready to pass. In terms of loading and performance, we'll help you figure out how to compute weight and balance, load factor, and deal with stalls. These all fit under loading and performance. So what that means is you probably can't use a 5-pound drone to lift a 50-pound anvil, things like that. It can come down to common sense, but we'll kind of help you in those gray area cases figure out what is realistic depending on the power and weight load of your drone. And then for operations, that covers communication, procedures, maintenance, and inspection. And the FAA does have its own online course specifically for operations to help further prepare you. So what happens after the exam? You're going to create an account with the Integrated Airman Certification and Rating Application, that's IACRA, in order to apply for your Airman certificate. If you need further instruction regarding the application process, the new user guide is a great place to refer. Within that application, you'll be prompted to enter your 17-digit knowledge test ID. It can take up to 48 hours to receive that. And then once you finish the application, the TSA will perform a background check and email you upon completion. From there, you'll receive a temporary ACRA until you are mailed your permanent one. I apologize. From there, you'll receive a temporary certificate, good for 120 days from IACRA until you're mailed your permanent one. So there's some really exciting upcoming drone laws, and no one knows exactly when they're going to hit, but it should be the relatively near future. And they're exciting because they really open up the possibilities of what commercial drone usage is going to enable. So here's a few that could significantly benefit the commercial drone industry. We've talked about the present, now we're going to talk about the future. The U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, said that the department has been successfully using drones to better assist recovery efforts in disaster-stricken areas. There are conditions under which human beings should not be sent for all sorts of reasons, and drones can perform a very valuable task, she said to the World Economic Forum recently. Michael Kratsios announced last October there'll be a program to open the skies for flights at nighttime, which is particularly useful for security. Let's say there's a break-in at your property and you want to immediately send a drone up to see what's going on, to give you eyes and visibility on it. You'll be able to do that whether there's someone there or not, if you can fly remotely and fly at night. Also great for energy. Maybe you want to check for heat leaks, inefficiencies. You'll actually be able to fly at night completely legally without special permissions. Flying over people could be very important for disaster relief, for filming, for a wide array of applications. Beyond visual line of sight has probably, to me, the broadest significance and impact. So that means deliveries, that means security, like we talked about. That's massive inspections for long projects. Maybe that's pipelines, maybe that's 100-mile highways, maybe that's right-of-ways. But all of these things that normally you would have to physically have a person inspecting it, now you could have a drone go tens or hundreds of miles collecting all the data for you without having a person monitor it. So these are really exciting things, and they're being enabled not just by regulatory change, but by technological change. So we use the DJI Inspire 2 drone primarily, and that actually has seek and avoid technology. So you physically cannot fly this thing into a structure. If I take it and I muscle down on the joystick as hard as I can trying to fly it into a wall, it has laser avoidance technology. It sees the wall. It will stop you. It will not let you do it. So things like that are really powerful, both for the technology that is developed, for the safety that they mean, and for the new possibilities that they open up for commercial applications. And currently, like I said, these long projects, they have to be manually inspected, or you have to maintain line of sight on the drone every minute that it's flying. So if you could send a drone out to capture 20 miles worth of pipeline or 20 miles worth of highway, that could save hundreds or even thousands of man hours and the related costs, as well as bringing data and allowing you to respond to problems more quickly if there are problems. We do a lot of work with highway construction. And when we were at the annual PennDOT conference this year, we heard a lot about it being a huge win for drones and transportation projects to be able to fly beyond the line of sight. So all these changes will ease the current regulations set in place and are expected to create more than 100,000 jobs and generate more than $82 billion for the U.S. economy in the first 10 years of being integrated into the national airspace. So really exciting times. And with that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the onboarding, and then we'll get to the Q&A. So if this sounds good, working with Identified Technologies, you'd get a dedicated customer success manager. They're going to learn about your specific needs, what you're trying to accomplish, what your goals are. They'll train you to achieve that, walk you through your flights, help make sure you're able to interpret the data properly through our SiteIQ software, and then help you integrate it into your just normal standard operating procedures, which is another normal part of your job. We have best-in-class support and available. So the way we're structured is not something where you just pay money and then we walk away. It's a subscription model. So we're with you every minute, every step of the way, and we only get paid as long as you're happy and you're getting a great value out of it. We also make sure that whether you need troubleshooting, software enhancement, or continuous updates, that we're always you're always getting the full value from our technology. We also have full online support covering every aspect of our technology. It's a fully integrated system, from flight planning to the drone to the analytical software to the Part 107 trading. And customer success will also create and deliver quarterly check-ins to make sure you're getting the results that you need and to make sure that you are aware of all of our new technology, which we're constantly updating, and to get your feedback on what you wish we had so we can build it. So in terms of why use Identified, it's winning more bids, completing more jobs, increasing your efficiency and profits, helping your stakeholders collaborate with more transparency, and keeping your clients more satisfied. And with that, you get to minimize billing delays. Instead of waiting 2 months for your survey data to come back, you can basically get it you fly in the afternoon, you have your data waiting for you the next morning, and you can bill based on that. Minimizing overwork, rework, haul costs, injuries, and avoiding technological obsolescence. Part of our package means that you're always getting not just new updated software, but also new updated hardware. So you're always using the most cutting edge technology available. So why are people doing drone mapping? Winning more bids, increasing profits, better Q&A, and keeping and satisfying your clients. So with that, I want to thank you and give you that free offer. So you can actually get a free month of aerial drone mapping. There's a chance to win it. We would just need you to fill out a survey telling us a little bit about your company. I'll put that in the chat box. Or if you just want to get a free demo, just to kind of get a feel of what our software looks like and feels like, what it can offer, that's there too. And with that, I want to turn to the Q&A. So in terms of how to submit questions to John Little, our VP of Aviation, there's a little arrow, and then this is the process to start entering questions in. Everything's fair game, so don't be shy. And it doesn't have to be FAA questions. So if you are particularly curious about that aspect of it, it can be legal. But if you want to know more about our drone hardware, more about our software, more about our accuracy, everything is absolutely fair game. So we turning you loose on Mr. John Little, our VP of Aviation. I want to give a few minutes for questions to start rolling in, and then we will turn it over to John. And John Little, can I get a mic check to hear how you're coming through for us?
How's this, Barry?
Loud and clear, my friend. I'm just going to give another minute for a few more questions, and then we'll dive into it.
Okay.
All right, John. So can you, as people are filling in these questions, just to help inform them, can you share just a little bit about your background in piloting, teaching, and FAA regulations?
Well, my background started when I went to college for a professional pilot degree. I earned that and earned my ratings. all my ratings are fixed wing ratings. And then when I acquired my flight instructor rating, then I became a flight instructor for the flight school, and that helps you build time and experience to move up into a next level of a first officer or co-pilot position where I was employed. And I flew small twin engine airplanes, and we hauled freight, and then we hauled we flew some people, and then I moved on to another charter organization, and then we flew freight and more people, and then eventually we transitioned to only passenger service. We were unscheduled. Um, my last company I flew at, I flew there for 18 years. I was a captain. I was a check airman, so I gave check rides in the aircraft that I was certified in, and and I was also the chief pilot there. So I took care of training and regulatory items such as manuals that you had to have to operate an air carrier certificate and different things like that, and scheduling training, and actually giving training to our pilot group.
Perfect. And what was your biggest surprise as you transitioned from flying, full-size planes to flying drones?
I it's a surprise. I wouldn't call it a surprise. It was the transitioning to a drone or flying a drone. I flew a little bit of RC airplanes before, fixed wing electrics, just a small foam airplane. But in the actual airplane, you're looking out the front window and the side windows, and you also get the forces of the airplane that are actually uh, uh, that your body's feeling from the aircraft. So when you're flying a drone, you don't really get any of those. And I understand you can look at the camera and get a first-person view, but it's not the same as sitting in the cockpit of the airplane.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Um, how have you seen commercial drone regulations change since you got involved with drones?
Well, the biggest change everybody knows is Part 107, whereas before you had to have a current manned aircraft pilot certificate, if it was sport pilot up through airline transport pilot ATP. And when 107 came into effect, whereas you only have to take a written exam versus versus a manned aircraft where you have to take a written exam, a practical exam, and an oral exam to earn your certificate and pass all three.
Got it.
So that's been the biggest change since the 333 exemption, and then to Part 107. Also, the FAA we've seen improvements with the FAA websites. They're getting a little bit better with their web portals as far as filing for waivers and airspace authorizations and different things like that. Um, and those are always helpful to the UAV pilot group when they're trying to attain those types of documents from the FAA.
Okay. In terms of both training and insurance, how can people limit their companies or their personal risk and liability um, with drone operations?
Okay. To limit, so you're saying try to limit the liability or limit the risk?
Yeah, and I'm
Um,
assuming that's a combination of both safe operations and training and proper insurance
it is.
as well.
It is. Um, Limiting your risk, and that's what you do need to learn that to operate a drone commercially, is to make risk assessments at your individual site, and and having a document that you can use to essentially not necessarily totally eliminate risk, but minimize risk. And minimizing risk will obviously start to, that way you're limiting what you're going to be liable for. But I say to help limit your, not necessarily limit your liability, but also to lower risk, is to have like a GOM, a general operations manual in place, even if it's a really basic one with a few chapters to start out with, and you can always add to it, make revisions to it. This doesn't have to be approved by the FAA, but some contracting companies, some larger construction companies, they require you to have these type of documents, and it would have everything from preparation of the flight to a risk assessment to emergency operations, and if there was an incident or accident with the drone, how you what you need to do, uh, and the steps you need to take, forms to fill out. Those would all be in a manual type uh, binder or a digital one that you could keep, and then your pilot group utilizes that. So everybody now is working, and their workflow and their standards are all identical.
Perfect. Um, we had a question about how well the practice exams that we provide prepare users for the actual test. Can you speak to that?
They uh, they are the questions directly, or they're verbatim from the FAA exam. Um, they do help you prepare. It takes just having the questions. You need to go and do a little bit of research. Um, but people with clients of ours or subscribers, they they can call and ask any questions that they may have, and we could always have a screen share and help them through the more difficult items such as weather and airspace and map reading.
In general, how long do you think someone should designate for training time? Is it something that will take days or weeks or months?
I tell most people, I tell them with because most of them don't have any type of aviation background whatsoever. I would give myself 2 weeks of at least and 2 hours per day set
Mhm.
aside where you study, and maybe if you don't understand something, you do a little research on it.
Sure.
Um, email the questions to they would email the questions to me or your customer support representative, and you could we would definitely track down an answer for you, so that it was so that you understood the answer and the question.
Got it. So if someone's starting pretty fresh, something like 10 hours would be a good amount of time to designate to it.
It
And then they could follow up with you for additional questions.
Right. I agree with 10 hours. Um, sometimes people the sections, when I spoke to the local FSDA, the Flight Standards District Office, and we talked about the written exam, and they keep track of what questions are answered incorrectly on the exam, and the the majority of questions that are not answered incorrectly on the exam are the airspace questions.
Mhm.
Then second is the weather questions. And in fact, it was uh, such a large margin with the airspace that there were a few of the inspectors that were suggesting to separate the UAV written exam and make one exam just for airspace.
Got it.
That has not come to fruition, or I have not seen like any type of NPR notice to pros rulemaking or anything on that. But I do know that question was raised.
Okay. Um, we had a question on recertification. How long after you get your Part 107 do you have until you need to get recertified, and what does that process look like?
It's the recertification uh, time limit. Your certificate's good for 24 months. Okay, so 2 years. It's good to. It doesn't. I looked at the certificate. I looked at my own certificate also, and it runs out at the end of 24 months. I have looked into the recertification process. I didn't see the FAA post anything yet, but obviously everyone that took their exam as soon as it was available of September of 16 are going to need to be recertified at the end of August 2018. This is just my opinion. If you're a current certificated manned aircraft pilot, you can earn your remote pilot certificate by going on to the FAST Team website. That's an FAA website, and you can take the take the training for the remote pilot certificate, and uh, they give you a quiz after you take the training, and once you get 100% of those correct on that exam, you can they will you apply through IACRA, and then they send you your temporary, then your hard copy, your remote pilot certificate. I suspect that that the FAA will have something like that in place in the near future, and it may be on the FAA Drone Zone website, which they've combined their website with the registration of drones, the waiver applications, and airspace authorization applications are all located in the FAA Drone Zone portal. And I would think that if anybody is wondering, definitely get on their email list, their Twitter account. They've been using social media to let people know when new things have been implemented and on their website for remote pilots.
Perfect. Good answer. Tim was asking, in terms of training, do you prefer to put out like general educational videos, or do you find it's most effective to actually kind of do screen shares and work with people one-on-one to answer their specific questions?
I think the best training that the feedback I have received is that when a person or an applicant for a remote pilot certificate, they get to the point where there are a few subjects that they do not understand, or they don't comprehend well enough to pass the exam. I have them email me a list of questions or document with a list of their questions, and they could use the exact test questions if they'd like, and then I will go through with an answer and explanation. The screen share, I like it because I can make an adjustment to their current level of what they've learned from the training. So that where a video, I understand you could skip through the process, and there are great videos out there. But on the screen share, we can move directly to certain items that they just feel they're lacking and pinpoint on one specific item. And it's kind of like it'd almost be similar to like a custom video made just for them.
Got it. Eric asked a good question. I'll take this one. It's what payloads are supported. So that, is that thermal? Is it photo mosaics? And exactly what deliverables do we offer? So we use a wide variety of different drones and with that different payloads. So I'll say there haven't been too many requests we haven't been able to fill. If the technology is out there, then we could probably use it with our system. Probably just we need to know about your specific needs, your specific use cases to give you a 100% thumbs up. But if you do want to sign up on our website, identifytech.com, for a demo or to just tell us a little bit more about what your needs are, we can tell you exactly what hardware is available. And in general, for any like specialty drone that we have to buy, we're enterprise dealers with DJI, and we just give you the pass-through cost. So if it costs us $1,000, it costs you $1,000. We don't make money on it. That's just sort of a standard kind of thing we do to hook up our customers and make sure you're getting what you need. Back to the FAA questions. John, they want to know, as regulations continue to open up, and I know this isn't something you can promise because the FAA is going to do what it's going to do, but as you see things kind of continue on the trajectory they're on, what applications do you see drones being used for 10 years out?
10 years is a long time with the advancements in drone technology. It says just in the last year. So 10 years, I could envision a drone that was also a robot that had appendages such as arms that not only could it inspect a comm tower or communications tower, but if there was an obstruction light that manned aircraft use, that you see the red lights blinking when you're driving down the highway at night and they're
Sure.
on a cell tower, and the drone could fly. It could automatically inspect the tower. It knows the light bulb has failed, and it could they could have a mount built onto the tower that the drone could lock onto, and then the robotic appendages of the drone could actually change the light bulb itself
I love
and
what you're thinking.
place it.
It's exciting. Would you fly on a drone airplane?
I, I had to chuckle there because I get asked that a lot. Um, I have about 10,000 hours in the cockpits of airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
It would be hard for me to not have a control if in front of me sitting in the front of the airplane.
Sure.
But
It's like,
remember,
yeah.
go ahead, Barry.
I was going to say it's like a lot of doctors are really bad patients because they don't want somebody else operating on them. They want to be in charge.
Right. That is I totally agree. Not that unmanned airliners won't be here in the not too distant future, but they will. I mean, the military already uses the Cessna Caravan, and it's fully automated. It's a single engine turboprop that with fixed landing gear, and it'll fly to the battle site. It'll land on an unimproved airstrip. The engine will shut down. It'll signal the people on the ground, and they'll have X amount of time to unload. The military uses beans and bullets, the food and whatever other items that it's carrying, and then they close the door. And when the time is up, it starts its engine and it leaves, and it's completely automated.
Wow. So as the FAA does continue to change their policy, assuming, let's say, end of 2018 or 2019, they no longer require line of sight on the drone for commercial use. How do you think that could affect how people are tracking long highway construction projects or pipeline inspections?
That those two, beyond line of sight and flight over people that aren't inside a structure or a motionless vehicle, are those two kind of go hand in hand, because that's what the drone delivery is working on. And also that would give you the highway projects, because obviously you could do live highways with vehicles. um, uh, you could fly right of ways where maybe there's people working on the ground and they don't have any idea drones flying over them. So there's the beyond line of sight flight over people. But that is that's the biggest rule that people are trying to that they want to have. They want to have that in their hand, because they're like, I can fly the drone 5 miles from me. Yes, but you can't see it with your eyes. So you're not permitted to do that under Part 107. That requires a waiver.
Sure.
Also, drones need to integrate into in order to with the UTM, with the FAA or unmanned traffic management, they need to integrate into the air traffic system in the United States and around the world. But the other portion of beyond line of sight isn't only controlling the drone. I believe the largest thing is whether you're flying over humans, that that you can avoid it from your remote control position, and the see and avoid of all other aircraft, because as you know, drones must give the right of way to all other manned aircraft, including a person under a parachute. So when the drones will, one item that the drone does not have is that airplanes do have is a transponder. There are drones such as the M200 and M210, which we utilize, but they have ADS-B in only, which is automatic dependent surveillance broadcast. So they can sense airplanes that have an ADS-B out, which they broadcast their signal out from the airplane. But in order, excuse me, but in order for a drone to be able to broadcast the signal out for other airplanes to be able to see in the cockpit, the airplane would see the drone location in a direction and also an altitude that the drone was at, to help avoid the drone, and it would also alert the person that was piloting the manned aircraft. But in order for that to happen, there are transponders for drones this time, but a drone that has a transponder that talks to manned aircraft, that communicates with manned aircraft, is going to that portion of the drone, the transponder and ADS-B out, is going to have to be certified through the FAA channels. And what that does is it increases. Right now, that would be a dramatically increased price for a drone, but it would start. That is going to be one of the items that they're going to need for beyond line of sight, and that will help you avoid manned aircraft. But like I said, the FAA would have to certify that component and say it was certified under a TSO or technical service order to be compliant.
Got it. We got a very fair question, which is sometimes we'll see drone footage of an event, maybe a concert or a sporting event that's captured via drone. So since there are some policies in place today about flying over people, how is that being circumvented, or how is that being done legally?
I don't know that because I think in the last year when I researched, there was just over 10,000 waiver requests for flight over people through the FAA's web portal. There's only, I tried to do a search, and I think I found 4 waivers that were approved, and all the waivers were tethered drones, drones that were very light, drones that had a power source that was on the ground. So the power from the electrical power from the battery was actually based on the ground and ran through the tether of the drone. So there are people that have those. So that wouldn't be circumventing the rule. Also, if you saw it at a concert, maybe they have a drone area that's maybe they have 100, maybe they have a 50 by 50 yard square area that's adjacent to the concert area, that's completely clear of people, it's secured, it has barriers, and they fly the drone vertically with the camera. So
Got it.
only the people with the drone are in that area. And I've also seen those videos, and I was trying to analyze how they were managing to do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it sounds like the most common methods are either to do it kind of adjacent to the area and then have the drone shooting down, or to have the drone tethered, which tends to get easier approval for that kind of work.
Well, it's not necessarily. Yes, that I haven't. The free flying drones over people. CNN has one. It's an extremely light drone. I'm talking a few ounces they use. So if the drone had a failure, it falling on somebody and hurting somebody is very, very minimal, or the FAA wouldn't have given awarded them that waiver.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it's the weight of the drone. There is a company that's really pushing hard with parachutes and airbags. All up until this month, all parachute waiver requests, because people did make ballistic chutes to put on a drone, they've all been denied. So the parachute idea is good, but the FAA wants it tested with very detailed tests, where it's automatic deployment, it deploys in milliseconds, and it deploys with certain failures. So it's integrated with the drone and can sense a certain type of failure, whether it's a 1-motor failure on a 4-motor drone, and what can happen, so it knew when to deploy the parachute. And on a larger drone, such as a Matrice or an M600 with a heavy payload, let's say it's 40 pounds, how it can not only slow the drone, but have an airbag deploy so that if it does land on a person or a property, it's basically going to bounce off and eventually bounce to the ground.
Got it. We've kept the full audience hanging on your every word this whole time. So, John, I want to thank you for sharing the expertise that you've built over 2 decades of flight experience. I want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. And if you do have any follow-up questions that we can be helpful with, please don't be strangers. Our website's identifiedtech.com. We are here to help. Even if we're not the right answer, we'll point you in the right direction, and look forward to serving your commercial drone mapping needs.